Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So the Flash producers have teased us with the idea of the multiverse, the idea of multiple timelines. So what I'm going to do is explain the history of the DC multiverse, the comic book multiverse, and then explain how the TV show might adapt that. A lot of you have also asked if the Flash multiverse will create a backdoor to connect the TV shows with the movies, and that's not the case. Anything you see on TV will have nothing to do with what's going on in Batman v Superman or any of the other movies. The very first version of the comic book multiverse started out in 1940 in All-Star Comics number 3. It was actually a pretty light crossover between characters. It was the first official meeting of the Golden Age Justice Society of America. Justice League didn't become a thing till 1960. The first Justice Society was Johnny Thunder, the Jay Garrick Flash, Hawkman, the Jim Corrigan Spectre, Hourman, the Ma Hunkel Red Tornado, the Wesley Dodds Sandman, Dr. Fate, the Al Pratt Atom, and the Alan Scott Green Lantern. Funny fact, at the time, Hawkman's weapon was called the Hammer of Thor. Yeah, I'm sure Marvel's lawyers really like that. Johnny Thunder's magic thunderbolt brought them all together, and they just took turns telling each of their most interesting stories. The reason why they call it a multiverse story is because prior to this, the other characters didn't exist in each other's titles. So like the Alan Scott Green Lantern didn't reference Batman in his comics. The first multiple Earths situation didn't show up till 1959 in Wonder Woman number 59. She gets transported to an alternate Earth and meets a woman named Tara Taruna who looks just like her, basically like that Earth's version of Wonder Woman. What you know as the multiverse today really started out during the Silver Age in the Flash of Two Worlds. The Barry Allen Flash debuted in Showcase number 4 in 1956. It was part of the big Silver Age reboot. They fridged all their Golden Age characters and just reimagined them in new, more interesting ways. That Showcase issue was just 2 Flash stories. It told the story of how he got struck by the Thunderbolt and got super speed. But they hadn't invented the idea of the Speed Force yet, so it was just a normal lightning bolt. It was also the first appearance of his costume ring and the first time that he time traveled by going super speed. So everybody loves Barry Allen, all is right with the world, but they get the idea for him to phase into another Earth, and he meets Jay Garrick. This is Flash of Two Worlds. This was in 1963. The way they explained it is that he was trying to do a party trick in Central City and vibrated his molecules so that he would look invisible, but instead he ends up appearing in front of another city. That ends up being Keystone City, which at this time was an alternate Earth, so he meets Jay Garrick and learns about the other Flash. Just to tie it back to the TV show for a second, so Central City is where the particle accelerator is on this side of the river. On the other side of the river is Keystone City, so they sit right next to each other. But that's the TV show. It didn't start out that way in the comics. Keystone City used to only be on another Earth. Later, that Earth became Earth 2, and they started introducing the naming convention where you have Earth 1, Earth 2, then you have the multiverse with like Earth X, Earth S, for all these different characters. So we're still in the 1960s right now. We're a long ways away from Crisis on Infinite Earths in the 80s. What happened is that the Flash of Two Worlds was such a popular story that DC decided to bring back all of its Golden Age characters and just put them on Earth 2. So now they could tell stories with their old characters without it complicating what was going on with their Silver Age characters, and they could always do crossovers. The first big Flaro-type crossover they did was later in 1963, just like a couple months after they did Flash of Two Worlds. They had the Silver Age Justice League crossover with the Golden Age Justice Society. That became like a yearly thing, like their yearly version of Flaro. For the next 20 years after that, DC slowly gained the rights to characters and tried to fold them into continuity, so they started introducing the idea of Earth S, Earth X, like all these different Earths. That's where you get to the shitstorm of continuity errors that led to Crisis on Infinite Earths. But originally, Crisis was meant to be like a 50th anniversary story. Marv Wolfman is the one that wrote Crisis on Infinite Earths, but the idea was pitched that they would use this event to clean up their continuity because it just gotten so crazy. Editorial was just having way too many problems keeping track of all their characters. So post-Crisis, what you have is a single Earth with a single timeline and all the survivors of Crisis on Infinite Earths. So some of the Golden Age characters survived, most of them were killed off, especially a lot of the crazier characters. So it was all born out of editorial just trying to simplify things, but eventually things spun out of control, all kinds of continuity errors, despite all the trouble they gone through, and you get to 0 Hour. 0 Hour was like the next big event meant to clean up a bunch of different timelines. It was more about multiple timelines collapsing than multiple Earths collapsing, so just a small distinction. Everybody be sure to give Hal Jordan a big pat on the back for that cleanup. The problem is the continuity errors kept happening again and again and again. You get to hyper time as a way to explain things with multiple different timelines. You get to Infinite Crisis, which brings back the multiverse from pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths. Or already this is like spinning out of control. You can see it gets super complicated. Post-Flashpoint, there were 52 versions of Earth left. They felt like this was enough to have some really cool crossovers and a bunch of different versions of characters. Enough so that it wouldn't get too complicated, but that ended up being the case anyway. So that's where you get to the big convergence event right now, where they're trying to collapse a bunch of timelines, get rid of a bunch of stuff, reboot the characters. That's why they keep advertising the new DC universe. So in the comics, the multiverse is all about multiple versions of characters sharing the same physical space together, like talking to each other. The TV show, probably not going to go that route. They'll probably go the alternate timeline route. That doesn't even begin to get into the idea of the positive matter universe and the antimatter universe. That's actually, Jeff Johns is actually playing with that idea in the Dark Side War title that he's writing right now. It's happening in Justice League. It's part of the Justice League title. Any way you look at it though, the comic book multiverse from a logistical standpoint is a complete nightmare. So that's why TV shows thus far have tried to avoid it. Smallville did try to do a version of the multiverse using the mirror box, where you have like crime syndicate version of Clark. A lot of you did ask too during the Flash finale if, when we see the Flash Museum and Killer Frost, if that's part of the multiverse too. Technically, it's not. It's really just different points in Barry's single timeline, like in his own timeline. He wasn't seeing different branches. So, like Killer Frost, for instance, happens in the future of his own timeline. But what about the Jay Garrick helmet? How do you explain that? Is that from the future? Is that from the past? Like, where did it come from? The way I'm choosing to think about it, at least until the Flash writers and the producers tell us otherwise, is that vortex they created is kind of like a time-space train depot that anybody can enter if they achieve the right speed or have the right technology. They really haven't told us that much, so I don't want to speculate too much on where that Jay Garrick helmet came from. But I know a lot of you guys are hoping that John Wesley's ship will get to be like an alternate timeline version of the Flash. He'll be like the Jay Garrick Flash. They could do that. It's a little on the nose. I'm not expecting it. The producers did say we would see multiple versions of the Flash. Wally West is the only one that they've said out loud, but they did show us the Jay Garrick helmet, so that's the other Flash there. So when they say multiple Flashes, they could just mean references to other Flashes instead of like actually casting actors as them. But I do feel like when the show gets to Wally West, it'll be an actual actor. They will cast him and we'll see him interact with Barry and the other characters. Really, you have to remember that the TV show's #1 mission is to do an interesting story and keep it as easy to follow as possible. So it's like, if you don't read comics, you need to be able to follow this time travel storyline. That's why I don't think they're going to get really crazy with the comic book multiverse. It'll be relatively simple, and we'll stay in this single timeline. It's just that this giant vortex that Barry's trying to close will allow some stuff from alternate timelines to spill into our timeline. They'll use it as a storytelling device the same way they used the particle accelerator explosion during season 1 to create all the metahumans. So think of it as a giant mixing bowl across time and space that it's probably going to take Barry the first 2 episodes to close. And I do think he'll close it in the first couple of episodes, but not before it allows a whole bunch of other stuff to spill into their timeline. Right away, I can say that Tom Cavanaugh is still a series regular, so he'll come back on the show in an alternate form, probably like the original Harrison Wells, one that did not get killed by the Reverse Flash. Eddie coming back is a little bit harder, but they said that he would appear at least a couple times, but only as a guest star. That could be in flashbacks, it could be alternate timelines. It's just they're slowly dipping their toe in the idea of Barry time traveling. Because he's still figuring things out, he's probably going to make some derps, and that's probably what's going to lead to some of these alternate timelines showing up. But for the most part, like from a story perspective, most of this is going to flow from that giant vortex in the sky. Everybody hold their breath for the TARDIS to come down and Rory to stick his head out before Legends of Tomorrow. Time travel, going to be a big thing in Flash Season 2. You have to remember that Legends of Tomorrow is a time travel based story, so part of that is going to inform what's going on with Vandal Savage. Here's my big question for you guys though. Where do you think that Jay Garrick helmet came from in the Flash finale? Is that from the past of Barry's own timeline, or is that from an alternate universe? For the most part though, I'm expecting the idea of just, multiple timelines where characters make different choices leading to different outcomes. That being said, Caitlin Snow supposedly going to be turning into Killer Frost. I think that will be our version of Caitlin. It's not going to be an alternate universe version of Caitlin. So because I haven't done a video on that character yet, what I'm probably going to do is my next bonus video will just be all Killer Frost. So be sure to subscribe to get that. They haven't announced any other new characters yet, but if there's anybody that you want me to do a video on, just let me know in the comments. I know a lot of you guys really want me to do a Supergirl pilot video, so I'll probably do that next week. I feel like it's okay now. Enough time has passed. While you guys wait for that to post, you can click here to learn all about Mirror Master in the comics and what's going on with him in Season 2, and you can click here to learn about all my favorite games from E3 this year. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tomorrow.